Hello everyone, and welcome to the game you've all been waiting for. We are at the same simultaneous exhibition we've shown yesterday, only thank you all for mentioning in the comments. I don't see how I missed that. Capablanca's opponent in the previous game was not Bashkirov, it was actually the famous Boris Nikolaevich Bashkirov, the poet. And well, if I knew that, he would not be the hoodie guy, but as I didn't know that, for some reason in the Edward the Winter book I have about Capablanca, it says Bashkirov, and when I googled Bashkirov versus Capablanca, Google did not realize I was actually looking for Bashkirov versus Capablanca. So that's, well, it's a shame, but, the game still stands, and it was against that person. But here we have a game against Sergei Prokofiev, a famous composer, and aside from being really into music, here he just finished his graduation at the St. Petersburg Conservatory. He won major awards for the piano. Everyone was congratulating him. Prokofiev was, well, he had a really busy day. He was just getting back home. It was almost 8 p.m. The simultaneous exhibition was just about to start. He had like 15 minutes, and he realized that he didn't have time to go home. He didn't have time to even eat. He just hurried, and he found a car that was already going there. So he arrived at the simultaneous exhibition. He faced Capablanca, and that was the first game that they played. That was played on May 11th, the same day he had his graduation. And he lost that game. He said that he was really afraid that Capablanca was going to play the King's Gambit against him, but he didn't. But moves to those moves for that game have been lost. I was unable to find them. And moves to the second game they played. The second game was also a simultaneous exhibition. It was 4 days later, on May the 15th, and there are a few moves available. Not by Capablanca. Capablanca does not mention this game in his book, but Prokofiev kept a journal. I will put a link to the journal in the description below. It will be the second thing in the description you will see. The first thing, as it stands, the best of Prokofiev, if you want to just listen to some music before we get into this game. But for the second game, he mentions that he played d4, d5, knight to f3, and that he prepared, in the third game he played knight to f3, but in the second game, bishop to f5 was played. He says that it's a trap he prepared for Capablanca for the simultaneous exhibition after c4, which Capablanca played. Sorry about that. Prokofiev went for knight to c6, and he says that he prepared this knight before to c2, that he would very much like to win the exchange. And he says that Capablanca, when he came to his board, as it was a simultaneous exhibition, Capablanca was just strolling around. Capablanca came to the board, he saw this position, he saw knight to c6, and he was like really trying to figure out what happened for 2 or 3 minutes, as Prokofiev mentions in his journal. Do check it out, it's a wonderful journal. But we don't have any other moves from game 2. Prokofiev did win the exchange, but Capablanca won the game, as Prokofiev says. What we do have are moves to the third game they played. That game was played on May 16th, so the day after this game. You can see that Prokofiev was really a big chess fan, and he did not want to miss an opportunity to play Capablanca as much as possible. So this game continued in a similar fashion, but instead of bishop to f5 here, we had knight to f6 by Prokofiev, just going for a nice symmetrical setup. We have c4 by Capablanca, and now comes the bishop to f5 by Prokofiev, just developing. The biggest problem in the Queen's Gambit and in similar lines is what you're gonna do with the dark square bishop. So here Prokofiev just develops it. He wants to play e6, and he wants to have the light square bishop already developed. But Capablanca immediately goes for some pressure, pressuring the d5 pawn here, but also going after b7. And this was Prokofiev's idea for the third game. He played knight to c6. And okay, Capablanca grabs the pawn. We have queen captures on b7. Now comes knight to a5, attacking the queen. We have queen to a6, now attacking the knight. And here we have knight captures on c4. And okay, grabbing back the pawn, we have knight to c3, and now comes e6. And now c4 is an excellent square, an excellent outpost for Prokofiev's knight, but it gives Capablanca the opportunity for some rapid development. And here he wastes no time. He goes e4. Of course, you can do this because you cannot capture. You would remove the defender of the knight on c4. And the problem with something like bishop to g6, you just capture here. And after pawn captures, queen c6 check wins the game. You attack the king and the rook, so the queen cannot block. You have to block with the knight, and then just knight captures. You remove the defender of the knight. You're threatening knight captures here, and also bishop captures here, so you cannot parry both threats. After e4 by Capablanca, we have d captures on e4 by Prokofiev. And now Capablanca misses the opportunity, as this is a simultaneous exhibition, to go for knight e5. It's a very nice idea because after captures and captures, knight d7, you get this bishop to b5 move. And after bishop to c5, you get queen to c6, and white already has a winning setup here. Because black can never castle, as, well, you would lose a piece here. You can't move the knight. You can't move the queen. You have to keep an eye on the knight, so you could harass the bishop for a bit, but the bishop always finds a safe square on a4. So here, amazing position for white. Capablanca keeps it simple. After d captures on e4, he doesn't go for knight e5. He goes for bishop captures on c4, grabbing the knight. We have e captures on f3, and now queen to c6. Capablanca is preparing a similar idea, but first he has to keep an eye on the g2 pawn. With check, we have knight to d7, and now g4, removing this threat, and also hoping that if bishop captures, Capablanca introduces the rook into the attack. But Prokofiev is not interested. We have bishop to g6, and now just bishop to g5, with the idea, of course, that if queen captures rook here. And of course, if f6, then white will just ignore you, simply castles, and if the bishop is captured, then bishop captures on e6, opens up the e file, the rook can now come into the game, it will be extremely hard to defend. So after bishop g5, Prokofiev takes this opportunity to develop and hasten his castling. We have bishop to e7, we have bishop captures, and now the queen still can't capture because queen captures rook. We have king captures on e7. Now comes queenside castle by Capablanca, and now rook to e8. Prokofiev takes this opportunity to artificially castle. He wants to play king to f8, and here Capablanca had the opportunity of going bishop to b5. It would create a similar setup that we already mentioned. The king would not be able to escape because of this threat of queen captures on d7, but Capablanca first improves the position even better. h4, now threatening to win the piece with h5. We have h5 by black, g captures, bishop captures, and now, again, Capablanca can go for bishop to b5, or he can go for the immediate d5. But here Capablanca chooses a different like. He goes knight to b5, which seems to be a lesser move because there's never really a threat of Capablanca capturing here. But you know, if you're holding a simultaneous exhibition, you will not always go for the absolute best move. Here, Prokofiev took this opportunity to go king to f8, as, well, you can't capture here. If knight captures, then rook c8 just wins the piece. Even if you save the knight by queen d6 check, rook e7, you still can't move it. If you move it, then you lose the bishop. The bishop is also unguarded on c4. So, after this king to f8, Capablanca played d5. And okay, of course, he wants to open lines. The king on on f8 is a bit suspicious there. We have queen to f6 by Prokofiev, and now d captures on e6, opening up an attack against Prokofiev's knight here. We have knight to e5 with an attack on the queen and also the bishop. Queen to c5 first with check, king to g8, and now even e captures on f7. Now, you can't capture with the knight. If you capture with the knight, you lose the bishop on h5, so you have to capture with the bishop. We have bishop captures on f7, and now comes bishop captures, queen captures, and now king to b1. Of course, you want to move your king away from the c file, as this is a weak pawn. You do want to win it at some point, so you don't want to allow this rook to c8 to come while your king is still on c1. Rook 8 to b8 by Prokofiev. So here, if you count everything up, it's 4 pawns Prokofiev, 4 pawns Capablanca, with a really sharp position, castles of opposite sides. You know, it's really just a crazy position. And here Capablanca should just go rook he1, centralize, and you know, claim that he's a better player and that he will slowly but surely win this. But here Capablanca, like Arnold Schwarzenegger yesterday, plays knight captures on c7. And it's a really interesting idea, but it doesn't seem to work. Here, his opponent, of course, you cannot go here because you lose this knight. But, of course, Prokofiev just played rook b to c8. And now, what do you do with the knight? How do you defend it? Here, Capablanca played rook to c1, just, you know, adding another defender to the knight. And although knight to d3 can be played here with an attack on the bishop and on the queen, Prokofiev plays an even better move. He plays rook to e7. Just adding a third attacker to the knight, and now there's no more saving the knight. Here, queen captures on d6 is played, and it could be that this is the position that Capablanca saw, but he just blundered. Because most likely he saw that after rook captures, maybe he saw rook captures and queen captures knight. But here Prokofiev just played queen captures on c7, and now Capablanca is just down a knight, down a piece. And you have to be very careful. If you play something like queen d4, you can even run into checkmate. Of course, you all see it. Queen c2 check, king has to move, and now a nice queen sacrifice for a very nice rook c1 checkmate. So after queen c7, Capablanca has to try something. He plays queen e6 check, king moves to h8, and now just a3, preventing any queen c2 checkmating ideas. We have queen to c2 check, king to a1, and now comes knight to d3, threatening checkmate. Capablanca has to go further into passivity. We have rook to b1, and now comes knight to f2, just grabbing a pawn. So it's a really just a terrible position for Capablanca to be in. He has no activity. Okay, the queen is active, but the queen alone can't do all that much. And it's really hard to imagine creating some sort of a perpetual checkmating sequence. But first, Capablanca goes for h5. He wants to push h6, and well, if he busts open the last pawn that's defending the king, perhaps he can hope for some sort of a perpetual check. But okay, queen to c6. Prokofiev wants to trade queens. Capablanca, of course, declines. Queen to f5. Still keeping an eye on the rook, maybe keeping an eye on the pawn here. But Prokofiev, the great composer that he was, still continues composing, even in this game. Knight to e4. He offers the f3 pawn for this knight to d2 idea. And there's not all that much Capablanca has to choose from. If you just push h6, then f2 will be very dangerous, just creating a super powerful pass pawn. So Capablanca captured the pawn, and we have knight to d2 with an attack against the queen and the rook. So Capablanca has to trade queens. Now we have queen captures, rook captures, and now rook to d1. We have rook to c2, now defending the knight, but also not allowing Capablanca any counterplay. We have rook to g1, now comes rook to c5, attacking the pawn, and now rook to g6. Capablanca wants to give up the h5 pawn for the a7 pawn. We have rook captures on h5, and now Capablanca plays rook to a6, going after the a7 pawn. And here, if he can eliminate the a7 pawn, then okay, he does have two connected pass pawns on the king side. Maybe that could be, in a way, compensation for the piece, and with some luck, maybe anything can happen. But here, Prokofiev, again, just shows Capablanca how it's done. Feel free to pause the video here and try to find a way to defend the pawn on a7. I'll give you a couple of seconds if you want to do it, as usual. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent composer. Not like Prokofiev, but excellent. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, knight to b3 check. King to a2, and now the move you had to find because your knight is under attack, rook to a5. And now, of course, if king captures knight, then rook captures rook. So here, if you move the rook, let's say rook c6, just rook b5, defends the knight, and then the pawn can be pushed forward. So here, Capablanca saw no other way but to trade rooks. He played rook captures rook. We have knight captures on a5, and here we have b4. And here, Prokofiev, instead of just moving the knight, he says, I'm a great composer. I mean, I compose whatever I do, even when I play chess, and he just played g5. He showed Capablanca how it's done. He said, I don't need my knight. You can, you're free to capture it. If you capture it, then g4, and the king is nowhere near to stopping the pawn. For those of you who like to draw things out, you can see that the king is too far away from the square of the pawn. He would need at least 3 moves to get in there. So of course black would be winning here. So after g5, Capablanca played king to b2, but then Prokofiev just played g4, still not interested in his knight, and it was in this position on move 43 that Jose Raul Capablanca resigned the game. So after 2 losses, the third time Prokofiev faced Capablanca, the game ended in finally in a win for Prokofiev, and he was very happy, extremely happy about it. People were congratulating him. It was really awesome. But do check it out. I only mentioned a few details from his journal. He has details from all the 3 days he went to a simultaneous exhibition against Capablanca, and mentions a bit about every game. But we only have a few moves again from game 2. So yeah. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Capablanca most likely didn't. But after the game, both Capablanca, Bashkirov, and Prokofiev went with Bashkirov to his place where Bashkirov would brag about his 2 other new cars that he bought. And then Bashkirov asked Prokofiev to play Tannhäuser for Capablanca and him, and he agreed because he wanted to hear Capablanca's opinion on it. It was his prelude for the harp, and Capablanca said it was all right. He approved of it, and he said that he heard it somewhere already, which Prokofiev knew was impossible because he composed it. So there's that. Capablanca was into chess, but wasn't really aware of what's modern in music. And also, Emmanuel Lasker also met Prokofiev during one of these simultaneous exhibitions, and he said that even though he wasn't much of a music man, he's still congratulating Prokofiev for his great achievements, because, well, everyone else was congratulating him as well. But yeah, a lot of really interesting ideas. They had tea. Capablanca was very tired. He was just staring at his teacup, and they didn't talk much, but later they shared a walk home. So really interesting journal. Do check it out. It will be the second thing you will see in the description below. First, as usual, for when we talk about Sergei Prokofiev, will be Best of Prokofiev. Do check it out if you want to still listen to some of his music. And yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Sergei Prokofiev met Capablanca over the board one more time, also in a simultaneous exhibition in Manhattan Chess Club. I don't know the results to that game, but I don't know. I think Capablanca won it. If Prokofiev won it, he would definitely share the moves with everyone, like he did with this game. But yeah, that's the game. A lot of you have suggested it, so I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Andriy Makuka, Lugard, Recipe Pricing, Bobby Treat, and Paul Staples for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. And we are continuing the Capablanca saga. We're preparing for the Gashimov Memorial, and also for the Grenke Chess Classic, and so on and so on. But yeah, thank you all, and I will see you soon. Have an excellent rest of your day.